Good evening, and welcome to Sports 101, the show that discusses sport beyond the X's and O's. Here we like to expand our conversations to include history, looking at the sport from the past, present, as well as in the making. We also look at the game from a people, places, and cultural perspective. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media at Coach_Harp412 and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with SportsZone Chicago and the litany of SportsZone Chicago shows by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. SportsZone Chicago can be found on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk app. You can watch and listen to my show, Sean and I in the morning, What's Up, Cuz, uh, Smoke Fellas, Second City, the great Sports Zone Chicago lineup. You can watch all these breaking shows. And if you miss something, please don't worry about it. Go to YouTube and search Sports Zone Chicago. But more importantly, we need everyone to download the Sports Zone Chicago app. The Sports Zone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, I would like to talk to you about this week's episode titled The Color of Coordination, Black Offensive Coordinators in the NFL. This title picture is of Byron Leftwich, former Marshall quarterback, who had a nice run with the Jacksonville Jaguars, played a stint with the Steelers and some other teams, but now he's one of the hot coaching commodities as an offensive coordinator, and he's been leading the Tampa Bay offense for the past few years. So in 2020, the NFL ended its 100th regular season with only 3 non-interim head coaches of color among the 32 teams. Of the 8 head coaching vacancies during the previous hiring cycle, which will be the previous season, 7 of those positions were to white coaches. The NFL claims it wants to increase minority representation from the front office all the way to the field. And Rod Graves believes there are many capable candidates to match these coaching positions. Rod Graves, formerly both an NFL general manager and a high-ranking league official, is now in his first year of the leader of the Fritz Pollard Alliance, which advises the league on matters of diversity. Mr. Graves stated that there is a strong pool of qualified candidates in 3 specific categories: those who have experience as head coaches, those who had interviews for positions in the past who have yet to receive an opportunity, and the newcomers. Mr. Gray stated that they're hoping that teams can see a fit to give a strong candidate for one of those 3 areas a chance. This next picture right here is Mr. Fritz Pollard, who the alliance is named after. The Fritz Pollard Alliance Foundation is a charitable arm or a 501c3 organization dedicated to educating the public about equal opportunity in sports and providing scholarships to aspiring young sports industry professionals of color. Fritz Pollard was the first African-American head coach in the National Football League. Fritz Pollard and Bobby Marshall were the first 2 African-American players also in the NFL, and they broke that barrier in 1920. Football pioneer Walter Camp, who has a notoriable college award named after him, called Pollard one of the greatest running backs he's ever seen in his life. Here's another picture right here, and this is Mr. Pollard with famed actor and spokesman Mr. Paul Robeson. So on September 30th, 2002, Johnny Cochran and Cyrus Mary issued a groundbreaking report called The Black Coaches in the National Football League: Superior Performance, Inferior Opportunities. They did this along with Richard Lapchick of the Sport Institute, the DeVoe Sport Institute at the University of Central Florida. This report revealed that Black NFL head coaches were held to a much higher standard than their white counterparts, and are consequently denied for fair chances to compete for head coaching jobs, not only in the NFL, but sometimes in college. A month later, on October 31st, NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue announced the formation of a diversity committee headed by Pittsburgh Steelers owner Dan Rooney to address these NFL minority hiring practices. Within 2 months of that meeting, the league announced a diversity plan, which included a requirement that each team interview at least one minority candidate prior to selecting a head coach. Most people know this diversity plan as the Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule is still not providing opportunities for qualified Black coordinators and aspiring head coaches. On March 2010, 2003, the Fritz Pollard Alliance was again formed as an affinity group of NFL minority coaches, scouts, and front office personnel. And the whole purpose is to get more people access and exposure to these jobs who oftentimes are overqualified due from their playing experiences in college and professional, as well as their knowledge of the game. So they're checking off all the boxes, but they still can't get an opportunity. Again, before and after the Rooney Rule, diversity has been an issue with many NFL teams in their hiring of NFL minorities and women. I want to show you a quick video on this right now, and this video is going to talk about a major issue that's going on in the NFL. So after the video, we'll unpack it. So just take a look, and again, we'll unpack this video right when it finishes.
What's up, guys? Corner Sports there. I've been watching professional football since the late 1970s, and I've never seen this before. African-American offensive coordinator, African-American defensive coordinator, African-American special teams coordinator, all on the same team. Now, the NFL has been around 101 years, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are the first team to have all three coordinators black men. Now, let me say this again. The NFL has been around 101 years, and this is the first time in the history of the NFL they had a black defensive coordinator, a black offensive coordinator, a black special teams coordinator. Now, this should not be a big deal in 2021, but it is, because it's never happened before. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers got women coaches. They have the most diverse coaching staff in the history of the NFL. But it goes to show you, if a guy is comfortable with you, he's going to hire other guys he's comfortable with. That's just how it is. But you're never going to see a coaching staff like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, probably ever again, where everybody's African American and you have women on your staff. Now, you'll see that at an HBCU school, but you're not going to see it here in the NFL. You're not going to see it where everybody's African American, except for the head coach and a couple of women's staff. It's unheard of. It's unheard of, unless you go to an HBCU school. So Bruce Arians is ahead of the game. He's breaking down barriers. He's breaking down barriers in 2021. In a league where he's been a coach for the last 20, 25 years in some capacity. Just a sad day. We're still dealing with first. The NFL has been around 101 years, and we're still dealing with first. The first black coach, the first black offensive coordinator, the first black this, the first black that. It's kind of ridiculous. Now you got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're one game away from the Super Bowl. One game away from the Super Bowl. Now, will this lead to other owners hiring more diverse staffs? More coaches? I don't know. Maybe. But it's long overdue, y'all. It's long overdue. You have qualified African Americans. You got qualified Cubans. You got qualified Asians. But it starts with the ownership and the coaches that's leading these franchises. But most guys hire guys they're comfortable with, that's all. Doesn't matter. If they're comfortable hiring certain people, they're going to continue hiring that person, regardless of any Rooney Rule or anything else. This is Corner Sportsnet, y'all. Talk to these guys later.
All right, thank you so much, Sportsnet, for the video. As you can see, the video highlighted previous year staff from Tampa Bay. And as you can see, Bruce Arians had a lot of people of color, and particularly individuals of African-American descent. He also had 2 women on his staff. Another thing I took from the video is the narrator talked about being comfortable. So if you looked at the names, you saw a lot of names from Bruce Arians' former stop in Pittsburgh, where he was the head coach. Larry Foote, Randall L., Byron Leftwich, all individuals that are with the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. And he brought him in to coach. Again, due to being comfortable with them and seeing them act as a player, how they manage things, and letting them progress into the coaching realm. Not all former players can be great coaches, but there's a lot of them that can be. So again, this shows Bruce Arians' ability to open up, and again, like the narrator said, be one of the very few teams in the NFL with so much diversity on his staff. Last part of the video, we talked about what other teams follow this model, and as of right now, it looks like Tampa Bay is still a few years ahead of his time. Remember, after being in existence for over 100 years, as the narrator said, there's still a lot of firsts going on within the NFL. So obviously, akin to basketball, some of the other major sports, the NFL's leadership and ownership is a little stagnant and old at this point. This picture right here is going to show 2 of the top 8 black coordinators in the game. On the left, you have Eric Bieniemy, and on the right, you have Byron Leftwich. Eric Bieniemy of the Kansas City Chiefs and Byron Leftwich of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are offensive coordinators who helped their teams advance to the Super Bowl last season. Their success is partly due to ability to see a problem and swiftly identify a solution, and yet they both admit there are certain questions which they have no answer for. So one of the things in coaching is about making adjustments, and due to being former players, both offensive players, they see the game with a keen eye and are able to make these adjustments faster than other coaches, but yet they haven't saw the opportunities to be a head coach. Eric Bieniemy has had over 8 interviews with no opportunities, and Byron Leftwich has not yet to garner a single interview yet. So the main question or the caveat in the room is, why is Eric Bieniemy passed over for each of the 7 head coaching vacancies this hire cycle, and how did Leftwich even fail to get an interview? Both of them said they have no answers because those things are not left up to us, as Leftwich stated. We are not the ones making the decision, so it has nothing to do with us. In a perfect world, obviously the focus will be on all the things Leftwich and Bieniemy have done to help their teams reach this point. But NFL, like most big businesses in the United States, is far from perfect, particularly as it relates to minority hiring practices. Of the 27 coaching vacancies over the last 4 hiring cycles, only 3 have been filled by black men, making the cases of Bieniemy and Leftwich even more conspicuous. Both are black, both are former players that had great careers, both were qualified. Eric Bieniemy had a better coaching career, I would say, playing, but he still was a notable player. And both have more complete resumes than the majority of guys who've got head coaching jobs this past cycle and beyond. And even with all this, in a league where the player population is roughly 70% African American, only 11% of the coaching vacancies since 2018 have been filled by blacks, a reality that some of the league office find embarrassing and that minority coaches find concerning. Again, the league office finds this embarrassing due to the Rooney Rule, which they instituted and pretty much is not working. The Rooney Rule was designed so each head coaching or coordinator or front office vacancy, GM, assistant GM, things like that, you're supposed to hire one minority, and particularly one person of African American descent. We'll talk about how those interviews go in a few seconds. But again, the league is embarrassed because they put all this money, this marketing behind it, and yet general managers, um, owners, as well as head coaches are still beyond the trend of our other modern day big sports in America of hiring minorities, and particularly the NBA. The biggest question in the NFL of race and reward as it relates to head coaches is sure to be a common thread for Leftwich and Bieniemy during their interviews last year during the Super Bowl preparation. And I'm gonna show you one video right now. This is Patrick Mahomes as well as Eric Bieniemy, and we're gonna check this out and see what their thoughts were during last year's Super Bowl.
And then honestly, I mean, there's been no difference. I think a big thing with him and what feeds into this team, especially during a year like this year, is he always preaches control what you can control, and that's your attitude, your work ethic every single day. And that's how he's been. I mean, obviously, he's disappointed he didn't get the opportunity to become a head coach after this season. But he knows that all he can do is make himself and this team better every single day. And he comes to that mindset every single day, and it helps us be the best team that we can possibly be.
It's always about getting the right job. And you got to understand, sometimes the job and the person have to connect. So there has to be a connection. The only thing I can do is be my most authentic self. That's who I am. Okay. I can only be me. Some team has to want me. On top of that, there has to be some type of collaboration of making sure that the chemistry is a fit. So for whatever reason, that chemistry has not been a fit. There has not been that opportunity to connect, but that's okay. All right. Because at the end of the day, I have an opportunity to go out here and work with the Kansas City Chiefs, which is a great organization. I get an opportunity to work for Clark Hunt, work for Mark Donovan. We got one of the best head coaches in all of football, who's a Hall of Fame coach, in my opinion. And then on top of that, we got one of the top GMs in all of football. So I'm excited about the opportunity that has been presented to me. The other stuff, I can't control that. That is out of my control. The only thing that I can worry about is today, all right, and moving forward, and what I need to do to help our guys to be at their best come Sunday. No, I did not ask to be the poster boy of this particular situation that I have experienced. At the end of the day, the only thing that you want to do is be recognized for all the things that you have accomplished. And for whatever reason, that has not happened. And that's okay. Because the only thing I know what to do is to go back to work and continue chopping wood, because that's who Fern Handy Marie Gibson raised. Okay. You didn't know who that was. That's my mother. She raised me to make sure that I stay focused. All right. And I just continue chopping wood.
Thank you so much. So again, those are two of my fraternity brothers right there, Roots of the Qs, and they were talking about mainly Coach Eric Bieniemy's situation. So you saw Patrick Mahomes give him glowing reviews, and then you saw Coach Bieniemy answer questions about his lack of opportunities. Those questions, and many times you heard him state he can't control that, and that is not a right fit. However, how many times in the past have we saw individuals win a Super Bowl and our offensive coordinator who called the plays is hired the next hiring cycle as a head coach somewhere? And this was a historic win for the Hunt family, the Kansas City franchise, as well as the state of Kansas City. Kansas City is an old school AFC team. And if you can recall the early days of the NFL, before and after the merger, the AFC was the conference that brought in a lot of players from historically black colleges. The NFC had some too, but mainly on defense. The AFC implemented the throwing style. So you look at the first Super Bowl with Joe Namath against the Green Bay Packers. He was running a modern offense in some sense of the words, versus the Green Bay Packers offense was just handing off and barely ran the ball. So the AFC is in the Chiefs, the Raiders, a few other teams have been instrumental in bringing in African Americans in the NFL since its inception. And you can see the Chiefs again now with a great offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. Yet these opportunities still are presented to him with a top offense in the NFL. So we're going to take a quick break. Again, this is Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. We come back, we'll talk a little bit more about these minority hiring practices and dive into Byron Leftwich a little bit. You're tuning in to Sports 101. We'll be right back.
Please stop and listen, because this important message may directly apply to you or someone dear to you. Several thousand African-American former full-time CPS teachers were unfairly terminated starting in the mid-90s and continuing to the 2000s. If you are one of those many former CPS teachers who was unjustly terminated, or if you are the immediate relative of a now deceased unjustly terminated former CPS teacher, you may qualify to participate in a lawsuit at no upfront cost to you. Please call 773-580-7183 immediately for more information. That's 773-580-7183. Do not delay. Act today, because time is of the essence. That's 773-580-7183. 773-580-7183.
See me. See me.
See me. See my dark skin and my kinky hair.
See me. Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my tan skin and my curly hair.
See me.
Don't see past me.
Don't see through me.
See me.
See my face, wet with tears from years of oppression.
See my hands, weathered and worn from decades of pulling myself up through your society.
See my feet, split from centuries of walking your delicate line.
See me.
See me.
See me.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Welcome back. I'm Jamar Harp, and again, this is Sports 101, the show that looks at sport beyond the X's and O's. Here we expand our conversation and game to look at it from a people, places, and cultural perspective through the lens of history, in the past, present, as well as in the making. Please get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other shows on SportsZone Chicago by following SportsZone Chicago on social media. You can find SportsZone Chicago on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Remember, subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, download the SportsZone Chicago app. Remember, SportsZone Chicago is the world's only Black-owned sports talk radio app. SportsZone Chicago can be found on the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Now, as I stated before, we're going to talk about some of these minority hiring practices and feature Mr. Byron Leftwich right here. Mr. Leftwich is currently the offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have one of the best records in the NFL right now, and he was drafted as a 7th overall pick in the 2003 NFL Draft. In 4 seasons, the former quarterback started 45 of 47 games including the playoffs that he played for that franchise. After that, of course, he had some internet stops along the way. He spent some time in Pittsburgh before ultimately retiring. And upon his retirement, he was a fast riser, climbing like a meteor through the coaching ranks after his playing days. Again, he's hailed in the industry for being razor sharp and a tireless worker. In case you didn't know, Byron Leftwich is the genius behind Tom Brady's incredible seasons since he's been in Tampa Bay and the potency of the Tampa Bay Bucks offense the past few seasons. All that's, again, Byron Leftwich's creation. He is only one of the 2 black offensive coordinators in the NFL, along with the Kansas City Chiefs offensive guru, Eric Bieniemy. So just to break down the Tampa offense, Leftwich, before Tom Brady got there, he coached Jameis Winston's historic year of 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions before he was traded to New Orleans. So Tampa Bay, they drafted Jameis a few years ago, and he was just average. And that first year with Byron Leftwich, he led the league with 33 touchdowns. However, the 30 interceptions was a black mark. 33 touchdowns is great, but you want that touchdown to interception ratio to be much, much lower. That same season, he threw for over 5,000 yards. And that year, Byron Leftwich and Coach Arians featured a powered, deep passing game where there was a lot of 50-50 balls. And Jameis Winston obviously got his interception rate up with those low percentage passes downfield more often than the short, high percentage passes. This is imperative as the average football fan doesn't understand the complexity of the relationship between the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the quarterback. So the offensive coordinator and the quarterback sometimes may spend more time, or oftentimes spend more time together than that quarterback may do with his spouse and or children. These are the number of hours they're sitting in the office game planning. They'll go to the field, try to execute some things they saw on video, and if it doesn't work, go back and try something else. So they're literally hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, watching film almost 8 hours a day, then with the practice. So again, the time they spend is monumental. The offensive coordinator is the one that's often a more influential force than the head coach, because he's executing the day-to-day details of the offense. And that makes the Sundays a walk in the park for some head coaches, because he can rely on the offensive coordinator to take care of the entire offensive scheme, while the head coach looks at the holistic complexity of the entire team. Over the past 2 decades, the quickest way for a coach to ascend of the NFL as well as the collegiate football pipeline and secure a head coaching job was to be a quarterback's coach or offensive coordinator, either at the collegiate or pro level. This is another reason why people are astonished that Leftwich and Bieniemy don't have jobs yet. However, as we just stated, like the past hiring cycle or so many others, the majority of these jobs end up going to white men most of the times. For some reason, the talent not only of Leftwich, Bieniemy, but so many other minority and African American coordinators aren't as respected, and the narrative is always being massaged to make sure these brothers don't get the respect that they deserve. So basically, people will not respect their intellectual acumen as former players. So the narrative will get massaged. Well, he's there to control the locker room. That's coach's guy. You know, he's a bulldog in work ethic, but yet in regards to game planning and analysis, and particularly in regards to making changes, he's not doing good with that. So here's Bruce Arians. This is a statement that he made. He says he gets way too much credit for the offensive success in Tampa Bay. I don't go to meetings. Byron Leftwich runs his offense from top to bottom, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves for it. So that's the head coach coming out stating that he doesn't attend meetings. The offensive coordinator plans and preps everything. That's another complaint that they get, that someone else does it for them, and they just execute. That it's going back to that Jimmy the Greek, that African Americans aren't skilled enough to be thinkers in the game. They can react and run and tackle, but they can't think enough to play safety, center, or quarterback. The Buccaneers offense, again, has thrived these past 2 years. Looking at Jameis Winston's year in 2019 with the 33 touchdowns and 30 interceptions, 5,000 yards leading the NFL, and Leftwich dialing up the plays. That year, the Bucs finished third in offense, despite Winston tossing 30 NFL receptions, was an NFL record. So he set a record for touchdowns, interceptions, and yards. The interceptions one is the bad one that you don't want. Under Leftwich, Jameis Winston led the league again in passing yards, throwing for more than 5,000 yards in one season. So again, this next part shows the acumen of Byron Leftwich and his ability to change. So when Tom Brady arrived in Tampa, Leftwich adjusted his wide open philosophy and added more running back and tight ends into the offense to do something similar to what Tom Brady was accustomed to, and that could fit his playing strengths. Not to say that Tampa Bay doesn't go deep anymore, but it's not an emphasis on a majority of their passing plays when they had Byron Leftwich as a starter versus now they'll attack certain areas of the field, flood zones. It's about timing and getting the ball out when that back foot hits for Tom Brady. So following these two impressive seasons, Coach Arians and many others in the NFL thought he should have received some interviews to be a head coach, yet they did not come. Arians stated he was very pissed Byron didn't get at least a single head coaching interview, and this is after winning the Super Bowl. So this is 2 years in a row that you had African-American offensive coordinators win the Super Bowl. First Eric Bieniemy, then Byron Leftwich, and neither one of them got hired, where every year in the past we saw that offensive coordinator, and particularly that one, especially if they called a great game in the Super Bowl, the playoffs, and throughout the season, scoring, over 20-some points, being, a high-scoring offense. It's almost a certainty that they would get a job the following year after winning the Super Bowl. So again, Arians always states that he gets too much credit for the offense. Byron Leftwich runs it himself. He does this because so many rumors come up that he's doing it, and he's just saying that to get Byron a job. So again, that supports the notion or narrative that the African American isn't skilled enough mentally to plan and execute a game plan. This year, currently, Tom Brady leads the NFL in touchdown passes, 25 passing yards, 2,650, and this is through 8 games, and at 44 years old. So now what are some potential landing spots for Leftwich? In SportsZone Chicago, you'll really like this. Currently sitting at 6-2 and in first place in the NFC South. The offense has been carrying the Bucs pretty much all year. They had, of course, they just lost to the Saints, and a few weeks ago they lost to the Rams in a great football game. But when you look around the league, possible destinations for Leftwich, where you can have a solid defense, a young quarterback with a lively arm. There's one team that comes off the mention, in SportsZone Chicago, the Bears. They jump off the map. Leftwich could be a perfect choice to mentor a young, talented quarterback such as Justin Fields, who needs some tutelage and a creative coach that can call plays that fit his playing style. Meaning Byron Leftwich can put Justin Fields in positions to make plays, not put him in harm's way by running quarterback draws and running sprint outs every play, by allowing him to get in the pocket and get comfortable and make NFL throws and see his progression year to year. So I agree. I think Byron Leftwich will be a great next head coach of the Bears. Again, in a league where 70% of the players are black, it's rare to see black men leading teams. The numbers say the league's predominantly old and white ownership hasn't progressed to the level of open-mindedness that you see in the NBA in particularly. And this is one of the main reasons you don't see an influx of young coaches, and particularly young black head coaches. The NFL had a high of 8 black head coaches in 2018. Tensions in the country worsened, and if you can recall the names Colin Kaepernick and George Floyd, both of them became triggers for the racial reckoning that have been agitating the black community for so long. And these two pointed examples agitated an already adversarial relationship between owners and players. If you can recall the Colin Kaepernick situation, where certain owners came out, Jerry Jones in particular, I don't want my players to need kneel. If you take a knee, you'll get fired. And there was other social backlash on black players taking a knee, even from their own players. There was an example with the Steelers organization where they had decided one thing, and then Alejandro Villanueva, who was now with the Baltimore Ravens, got a swelling of pride being a former Army Ranger and decided to go against the team and go out. So that caused a lot of turmoil in regards to the inner workings of these teams and organizations. After that incidents and the kneeling, you start to see black head coaches drop like flies. Now, in previous years, it was always at least 2 or 3, but after this incident, you saw them getting fired at a rapid rate. So are the two related? I don't know, but a lot of people think so. When the smoke cleared, black football fans were left with 3 coaches to start the 2021 season in the 32-team NFL. You had Brian Flores, David Culley, and Mike Tomlin. With that being said, it's time for Leftwich Bieniemy and other qualified minority sectors, including women, to man the NFL sideline in coaching positions, recruiting, scouting, administration, and general manager roles, something both have proved that they're more than ready to do due to their past experiences. These NFL owners agreed on a way to expand methods to increase minority representation amongst head coaches and general managers since the Rooney Rule was not working. The idea they came up with was that teams that lose a minority coach or executive to a head coach or general manager job with another team will receive a third round compensatory pick for 2 consecutive years. They also stated if a team loses a minority coach and an executive to head coach and general manager roles, that club will also receive a third round compensatory pick. The hired minority head coach and general manager will need to have been employed by the previous team for at least 2 consecutive years in order to receive this compensation. Now, this right here blatantly shows the Rooney Rule is not working, as the league has went to measures to punish teams for not hiring these overqualified black coaches who oftentimes are former players or they were great coaches on the collegiate level. To put things into more broader context, the NFL has never had more than 8 coaches of color and more than 7 black general managers at one time, and that's through its over 101 years of existence. Initially, the Rooney Rule, which required a team to again have at least one minority, in particular African American, interview for a head coaching or executive position, appeared on track to remedy the league's long-standing issues. But again, as team owners have said in recent years, turning a possible solution into an easily defined nuisance is what actually happened with the Rooney Rule. There have been so many accounts of black coaches who have shared stories of owners and executives of clubs that they're interviewing with being late for their meetings, sometimes not showing up, not calling any of their well-positioned references. So there's been times where these individuals have references from high-profile collegiate and NFL coaches. They didn't even call them. And all these are signs that they were not being seriously considered for the position. It was just tongue-in-cheek to fit NFL rules. And the NFL also is stating through this that they don't want to change the vanguard and allow more young and particularly African-American coaches to have opportunities. Former star safety Rodney Harrison, who is now a commentator for NBC Sports, said he's insulted at this proposition because the proposal is premised on the idea that minority coaches won't be hired unless teams are giving carrots. And he says, that's a shame. It should be other sanctions put in place if they're intentionally not hiring, black male coaches to leave them out. There was also quotes from the late law professor, rest in peace, Derek Bell, who said, who basically came up with a theoretical concept called the entrance convergence thesis. Again, that's a theoretical concept called the entrance convergence thesis. Now, the entrance convergence thesis explains when white America grants racial progress to black America. So to define the entrance convergence thesis, he said when white folks, and particularly the ruling class benefit too, then America more moves towards making the country fairer around racial lines, but only when white America benefits. One example among many others appears in the context of affirmative action, he stated. So we go back to the 1970s, the United States Supreme Court ruled that a university couldn't operate an affirmative action program to remedy past and ongoing racism. Again, in the 1970s, the Supreme Court ruled that a university couldn't operate an affirmative action program to remedy past and ongoing racism. But in 2003, the Supreme Court held, after hearing from major corporations on the importance of diversity in selling products to racially diverse customers, they stated that a university can operate an affirmative action program to promote racial diversity in the classroom. So this is very conflicting. So doing the right thing to help victims of racism then moved the justices helping white corporate America did. So that's what moved the Supreme Court justices to do the civil rights move right there, corporate America. So if you look at the civil rights movement, instead of integration, it was more of a assimilation, where the black community's economic power went to the European and other communities after integration. Obviously, we know in segregation, being segregated, you only can spend your money with your own. So the black dollar circulated multiple times in the community, just like other ethnic groups' dollars. However, after segregation or integration, excuse me, what I call assimilation, because there was not integration to the black side. It was mainly African Americans assimilating to everyone else's culture. You did not see those things. So again, that's an example of what Claude Anderson talks about as wealth leaving the community. The white billionaire class of the NFL ownership, again, passed this rule largely because of negative media coverage and a possible Johnny Cochran discriminatory hiring lawsuit. So again, this is just a CYA situation to appease the media as well as any possible lawyers threatening to sue, because what we have is apparently a glass ceiling in regards to African American males, women, and other minorities. So in closing, what can we do to remedy this? Similar to the NBA and collegiate basketball, the players have to step up and voice who can coach them. So if you look at, again, using the models of the NBA and collegiate basketball, you'll see trainers become coaches on a coaching staff, whatever it takes to get that player there, because the new vanguard in ownership and administration within the NCAA as well as the NBA knows that these players know the power that they have. So they negotiate with them, unlike the NFL, where it's more of I'm telling you what to do. So that's a main issue right there. So if the NFL players pretty much then be hindered by these contracts and other television deals, media deals that they have, that oftentimes say that they can't speak out on certain things. If they did that in mass force, then the owner can't, let everybody go because, he'll lose. And again, just like the Montgomery bus boycott, an example that we just stated is about corporate business that causes change. So if we look at the Montgomery bus boycott, this bus system in the city of Montgomery, Alabama, was about to close down because if the majority of its riders who are African Americans stop riding for months, then they're not making any profit. So to make a profit, they decided that if you ride this bus, you can sit anywhere you want. So it wasn't religion, marching, or anything that made that change. It was economics, the dollar. So we have to look at that with our players, coaches, and executives in the NFL. Also, more initiatives from the NFL Players Association and League to ensure entry-level coaching positions. They have a Bill Walsh internship right now where African Americans, and particularly on a collegiate level, spend a few weeks during training camp with the NFL team, but more needs to be done. Again, if the issue is about, I can't hire you because I don't know you and I'm not familiar with you, then more opportunities should be created where these individuals can be around you, invoke conversation, talk ball a little bit, spend time with each other, and then you may get more familiar. So you may end up hiring more African-American males as well as minorities. As more Black entry-level coaches are hired, eventually pools of coordinators and head coach candidates will increase. Now, this is the reason that the glass ceiling is there right now, because just like on the playing side, once integration became a fact within the National Football League, you saw the paradigm of the league shift. I mean, it become more African American based. So these owners and coaches know the same thing will happen on that level due to so many qualified players of African American descent that were great players and again are current coaches. Also, we must look at state and local municipal sanctions. Many states and local municipalities or cities that the NFL teams hold in, they give them strict requirements in regards of what they can and cannot do, what they can represent. For example, when Pittsburgh signed Michael Vick, PETA was enforced, outside, the same thing they did in Philly, protesting. And some cities decided not to bring him there because of the protests, how strong PETA was politically in that area. Also, oftentimes you can look at racism issues. If you look at the Riley Cooper incident when he was in Philadelphia and he went to the Kenny Chesney concert and was using racial epitaphs at security guards, the NFL had to mark action on that. Now, they didn't fire him, but he was suspended from his team, had to take some racial counseling classes. So the point is, all these teams monitor what they deem socially acceptable. So when Michael Vick and his dog fighting, he was terminated from the Falcons. So what if owners in these cities said, I'm in Atlanta, I'm in Charlotte. This is a predominantly Black city. If you don't see any more Black head coaches, then this lease is not going to be renewed here. We can get another team in here. You're not going to be able to put your stadium anywhere in a municipality that I work in. That could be an example. Remember, if no diversity moves a team, no new stadiums will be built without this hiring diversity. I thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Sports 101 with me. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. Be sure to follow me on social media, Twitter at Coach_Hart412, and Facebook under Jamar Harp. Make sure you get social with Sports 101 and a litany of other SportsZone Chicago shows by following SportsZone Chicago as well on social media. SportsZone Chicago can be found on Twitter at SportsZoneCHI, Facebook at SportsZone Chicago, and Instagram at SportsZone Chicago. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, search SportsZone Chicago, but more importantly, we need everyone to download the SportsZone Chicago app. The SportsZone Chicago app can be found in the iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon stores. Thank you for tuning in to another week's episode of Sports 101. I'm your host, Jamar Harp. We'll see you next week on our normally scheduled day and time, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Please enjoy the litany of other shows on Sports 101, on SportsZone Chicago. Let's watch on Facebook and YouTube and get our viewership up. This is a sports show and a sports network for the people and by the people. This is Sports 101, and I'm your host, Jamar Harp. And I'm gone.